Okay. As target individual, you once, especially when after the V2K starts, uh, it's funny how these people they use childlike people for a purpose, and there's a reason why they kind of use childlike people. For me, at least, is because the logic they're gonna implant in my brain is gonna be nonsensical. And why is better to have a childlike individual with a spectrum-like ways of thinking? Because it's just not. They are trying to remove logic, right? And these childlike people have a logic of childlike. At least they sound like that. Maybe they know, but I don't think that, but there's definitely people around them that are supposed to be the opposite, supposed to be the common sense people, right? Because the job is to try to make somebody accept something that is not naturally happening. And they have this tactic of kind of like brainwashing you and manipulating you. And what they like to do is right now, it's because my brain is just so gone. They're not even using the interactions and dialogues you used to have initially when this thing started, because you didn't know what this thing was about. Like I said before, when this thing all started, I didn't know what these people were. I was kind of listening to these people, believing that these people are trying to figure me out. I didn't know about target individuals. I didn't know about the systematic tactics they use to break people down. Systematic, literally doing things systematically the same ways. I didn't know about the scripts. I didn't know the manipulation of the libidos. I didn't know the dreams, the words. I didn't know all of that was part of what they do. So if you don't know this, and you think that these people, or maybe they're like trying to investigate or do this and that, you kind of like have these dialogues with these people, and they want you to have those dialogues, and they do this thing which you're gonna listen to, is they have this thing where they make you experience these things. That, oh my gosh, what's that? How did you? What was that? Like they'll make me feel like, for example, right now there's like a ice cream thing happening, and they could make me feel stimulation because the ice cream kids, pedophilia things, that's what they do. So they start stimulating me, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, what was that?" And I remember they used to do that all the time. They'd be like, "Oh, huh?" And they'll make me feel something. And it's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And they'll talk to me like they don't know what's happening to me because they were manipulating me. I'm supposed to subscribe to this. So it's like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know the level of control they have on people. I don't know what's going on. And so you don't know that these people are truly manipulating you in every way. Now I feel like a stupid, I feel very stupid now, but that's how you start. You don't know much, so you start thinking that's what's happening to you, even though it's not natural. You can't believe that they're really controlling you in these disturbing ways. You don't understand. Because once you listen to testimonies, like, oh my gosh, they like to play with the libido. They do this pedophilia type of things. They make you do this program perversion and aim it toward children. They're like, it's very specifically pedophilia centric. So you don't know these things. So they will do these things, make me feel stimulation. For example, I will hear some kids scream, ah! And I'll feel stimulation because they'll make me feel this way. Or some kind of, and the person I'm interacting with will be like, what? What's this? And then they'll start making me having the dreams and pedophilia type of things and the nasty things, and it was so nasty. And it was nonstop. I could not look at a child without getting disturbing stimulations, and this still happens. While I'm showering, they're making me imagine some disturbing. Everything was just so disturbing. It was so disturbing. And they was like, no, it's you. Remember, you felt like that when you were a kid. It's like, no. And then they bring out, but remember what you did as a kid. It's like, yeah, a kid can do stupid things, but I didn't feel like this. It's like, I'm not a kid. It just doesn't make sense. I had the stupidity of having those dialogues. And they do these things, which you're going to listen. They have this thing where they have this bad cop, good cop kind of like interactions. There's somebody who try to talk to you via the V2K and try to talk to you in this way, is like in a more logical way. It's like, what? It's like, tell me, what do you feel? What do you feel? It's like, no, I feel this, like this, like I'm over caffeinated, and then I like try to describe. It's like, no, I feel like something is going on in the brain, and it's like, and because they try to create something that you can be like, oh, but when you were a child, did you feel like this? And you don't know, they manipulate your memory, and so your memory is like, oh, did I feel like this? Yeah, maybe I don't remember, but it feels trying to get you to accept these things, and you have these dialogues with this good cop who's trying to like wonder what's going on, who's trying to make it seem like, what's going on with you? Really? And they try to be like, oh, no, no, no. It's like, and they try to be like, how would you feel? Like, what's going on? It's like, how can you describe this feeling? And I feel like my brain is like, I can compare it when I have like too much coffee. It's one of the brain chemicals they can release. It's like over caffeinated. It's like I can take something and my brain will calm down because they will do things to my brain, and I could literally feel like just an explosion in my brain. It's like, really? Oh, okay. So you tell me? It's like, yeah. And it's like, does he? And it's like, it feels almost like when I was a kid, but because what they do, they try to mimic something like when you're a child. And but aim these things toward children and create this. It's so nasty. It's like, oh, you feel like it's like when you were a kid, right? It feels like, and they'll create something that's mimicky, but create it with different stimulations to make an impression that it's something you felt when you were a child. They always talk about it's you when you were 8 years old, 9 years old, right? And they will be like, it's okay, you like the neighborhood pedophile. I was like, what? No, this is not natural. You make me feel this thing. Something have happened to me since you guys something's happening, right? And this guy come in, right? This good cop, and it's like, do you even know what a pedophile is? Because like, of course you're not. You talk about you when it's short to come up, and it's like, do you even know what? And I was like, yeah, of course, it's somebody who do things to kids, somebody who has stimulation or something like that toward kids, right? But I'm like, I think he's on my side. This is a good thing. All along, it's part of the breaking you down. Because they do the peripheral type of torture. Systematically, you're going to hear this thing over again. They do this back and forth where they try to make you accept what's happening to you as if it's happening to you organically. And they try to have this good cop, bad cop thing to try to break you down. Everything they do to me have been done to others. You're going to hear the stimulations. You're going to hear the dreams. You're going to hear how they force you to have stimulation toward children. You're going to hear how they have this like scripts and how they insult you, degrade you. You're a pedophile. Not only they're the pedophiles, the entities running these things are filled with pedophiles. And in my neighborhood, there was a bunch of pedos who have raped 4-year-old kids. And what they were trying to do is try to break me down and to make me subscribe to these peripheral things that they've started making me experience. And because they do have these things where they try to create these dialogues with somebody who's like a good, like, he's there, he's trying to make logic to you. It's like, of course you're not. Talk about you as a kid. Do you even know what it is? All along, they're trying to break me down. And it's like, yeah, and it's like, of course, I know I'm not. It just doesn't make sense. No, you are. Trying to like have somebody who is not logical, like this childlike people, and then having somebody who's logical. It's like, of course you're not. Do you even know what it to get that trust and this back and forth? And this is the things where they do the good cop, bad cop things. So today they're like, oh, you remember when he had to say this and that? It's like, yes, I was stupid enough to have these dialogues and thinking that these people were good people, not good people, but people who wanted to figure me out. Right? If they have logic, they weren't. They were playing the game where they break you down, break your ego, so they can repattern you with these pedophilia things. And obviously, looking back, it's like, of course I know. Not only I know you guys are, I know who's the pedos. I know you do the pedophilia type of torture. On top of that, these agencies that are in charge of doing these things to me are filled with pedophiles, and they torture children.
8 billion brains on the planet, potentially. Read them. Marines. Underwater.
How do you explain this is happening to Len? How do you rationalize it?
Come in private. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Can I talk? Here's how I do my studies, and I wanted to find the commonalities, but I have to throw away the ones I'm uncertain about that are true targets. Maybe there's natural schizophrenia. There's a whole bunch of chemical imbalances, et cetera.
Right.
These weapons can actually induce and mimic all those diseases and effects. But the conversations, the scripts, they're called, are always the same. I've heard them all. They're slightly tailored for each individual, but they're scripts. And they're meant to confuse the very derogatory. That's just typical breakdown. If you've ever been to boot camp, you're a worm until you're part of the team. And why would you want to break down the ego of that person? To rebuild it. So this gets into creating Manchurian candidates, split personality spies, and information couriers, people that will carry the V2K. So they'll say, we're the Russian government, we're the Chinese government, we're evil aliens, we're Satan's, satanic ritual abuse. And I've heard all these stories. One guy believed it was some 14-year-old kid with an Xbox that lived next door. The trickery really is that great when you're under hypnosis that people will believe something other than a massive government could do this. And so anyway, my interview with Len, he very well described a typical breakdown script that's used on almost all the TI victims. TI stands for targeted individuals. Some of them are pretty crazy. They have names like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, and those are the confusion tactics. And when they're breaking down the ego of the human through all the pains and tortures and the verbal breakdown, these are typical CIA torture scripts. I mean, Kubark manual. And they do good cop, bad cop interrogation called Jeff and Mutt, and they go right through the list, right? Just textbook. So whoever the handlers are on the other side of this synthetic telepathy, they're following the handbook perfectly.
They're trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. It's disgusting. Take this whole thing into account so much. I make it so dramatic. It is dramatic. It's somebody trying to end my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through weapons. I don't know.
I can be free from this torture. Every day has been a miracle of survival. I also experience what is referred to as malodorance. This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat of planted dreams and videos in my closed eyes.
Realized that was impost, so I thought, look at this losers, don't know how to put me down, and they are doing this. So I told them that I know what you are trying to do, and I started laughing, and then I said again out loud, you'll never take my will, ass. So just to show them that I meant what I said, I kept playing with my dog, and even though that attacks continue, I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use. A people, better said young people, also children and homosexuals. When I aggravated them I usually called demeaning names, and one of them is referring to homosexuals. For me all of the slaves are misfits, society haters, scumbags, etc. No, I don't have anything personal against them, homosexuals, but as my way to aggravated the slaves, and since they love to use children for the torture and stalking, street theater etc. Especially teenagers for the stalking at close range with an attitude, they are using them during my sleep in the perversion program, and so you can imagine what the slaves of torture are pretending to do to me. In the last days, as today September 9th, 07, anything I do, either watching TV or reading of whatever I'm doing, they brush me sort of say, I feel like I'm aroused all day and I feel the palpitations in my genitals for what I'm thinking, and since the attack comes so quickly, I realized my programming has been set on auto, in their central computers, no handlers could do something like this that quick. What make me realized, the slaves are desperate to get me. Unfortunately for them they are facing a strong wall where no matter how much their computers EAP me, I know I'm not changing. As I said, I feel like they've been set up a beam where I feel constantly stimulated. I'm talking sexually, like a heat in my genitalia, like getting aroused constantly, trying to make me feel uncomfortable, because it doesn't stop.
I also often see highly disturbing pornographic images and videos, including highly disturbing pedophilia type of images and videos when I close my eyes. It also includes
Able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts and images and imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
The targets were forced to perform homosexual acts on each other against their will and religion in order not to be beaten or killed. This is a common breakdown tactic of belief systems and the human will. In no-touch torture the techniques are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their minds. And vice versa is true, that heterosexual targets are forced to view homosexual sexual acts like in the
any part of the body. This technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal, or it can sort of turn off the
occasion. I was told I was going to be shot in the face, and it was an older guy. He was like really, really disgruntled and pissed off. Yeah, you're going to get shot in the face. You know, sound like an angry ass old person. You know, then a couple of days later, a female said the same thing. Don't get shot in the face. You know, stupid shit like that. But what I really noticed is with the Voice of Skull, it's a bunch of females. You know, and I'm like, bro, really? You're not a woman. What real woman would stalk another female or sit back and allow that to go on? You really think?
Oh, that's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally.
Well, don't worry, Stephen. I think a few of them were fired.
Yeah, well, the rest that's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally, whatever the hell that.
Where do you think
that.
you work?
CIA.
That must mean there is such a lack of fearing any sort of accountability. For crying out loud. While on assignment, 1,400? You must have not been doing any job.
Well, even if you had to look at it to make sure you knew what it was, don't you just need to look at one?
Right.
You're like, I better check the other 1,399
Yes,
just to be safe.
Yes, I better
Each
check the other
file.
1,300 labeled tax things.
Unbelievable.
Oh, my goodness.
And the guy with the 6-year-old?
Disgusting.
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
Twice with the 6-year-old.
So and here's the scariest part. Out of the 10 instances that are described in the report, only one person was ever charged with anything.
Yeah.
With anything. Comment below. Do you guys know this story? This should be catnip for the media, right? Think about it. You've got this lewd behavior. You've got corruption at the highest levels of government, right? Aaron Brockovich, something about fake tits and tap water.
Yeah.
The CIA, raping children and sexually assaulting children, and they're not being prosecuted?
Had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was simply fired. One employee purchased sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. One employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. Not sure what actions, if any, were taken by him. One contractor arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent. I think that you mentioned that. Posing as a child, he had his contract revoked. One CIA staffer was charged with child sexual crimes, and the employee was was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. The CIA did not answer detailed questions, saying only that the agency takes all allegations of possible criminal misconduct committed by personnel seriously. So you're saying the reason why they didn't take this more seriously, why there weren't actual prosecutions that were carried out, is because what they were trying to not only protect their agency, but trying to protect the country from being compromised in some way by our foreign enemies who would use this information in some kind of bribery scheme?
I think that it's actually quite worse than that. In my personal opinion, my analysis based on this is that they know that we're already compromised, and they don't want to have to admit how compromised we are by these foreign adversaries, by these foreign intelligence agencies. They know we're compromised, and they don't want it all spilling out into court. So they'll go over to FBI, they'll go over to DOJ and say, hey, don't worry, we're taking care of this. Hey, don't worry, we'll take care of this guy. Don't worry about that. Don't ask any questions. We don't want those secrets coming out in court. We know the FBI does this. Time and again, just like in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where the FBI was able to testify off camera, completely in silent, and then their testimony was stricken from the record, so we couldn't even get a public review of what the transcript was, what the FBI testimony was in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, because we know they were conducting surveillance of this entire thing. It's the exact same thing, and I was told behind the scenes in that case, they said we don't want our operations spilling out into court and people talking about it on YouTube. That's a direct quote.
Wow. Okay, here's more from this, and we'll finish this and then move on to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. But sexual crimes involving children, says BuzzFeed, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies that handle sensitive information. In a November 2009 report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees America's spy satellites, acknowledged viewing images of child sexual abuse during polygraph examinations. This is so disturbing. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that is happening for whatever reason with more frequency in our intelligence agencies, or is this something that is more pervasive in the general population than I originally realized? I mean, what's going on here? This is so bizarre. Remember, it's so evil.
Allie, we're told, and when I was put through recruitment into the intel community, you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into Congress, and Congress needs to launch a brand new church committee, number 1, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number 2, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting behind?
8 billion brains on the planet, potentially. Read them. Koreans. Underwater.
How do you explain this is happening to Len? How do you rationalize it?
Come in private. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Can I talk? Here's how I do my studies, and I wanted to find the commonalities, but I have to throw away the ones I'm uncertain about that are true targets. Maybe there's natural schizophrenia, there's a whole bunch of chemical imbalances, et cetera.
Right.
These weapons can actually induce and mimic all those diseases and effects. But the conversations, the scripts, they're called, are always the same. I've heard them all. They're slightly tailored for each individual, but they're scripts. And they're meant to confuse, the very derogatory. That's just typical breakdown. If you've ever been to boot camp, you're a worm until you're part of the team. And why would you want to break down the ego of that person? To rebuild it. So this gets into creating Manchurian candidates, split personality spies, and information couriers, people that will carry the V2K. So they'll say, we're the Russian government, we're the Chinese government, we're evil aliens, we're Satan's, satanic ritual abuse. And I've heard all the stories. One guy believed it was some 14-year-old kid with an Xbox that lived next door. The trickery really is that great when you're under hypnosis that people will believe something other than a massive government could do this. And so anyway, my interview with Len, he very well described a typical breakdown script that's used on almost all the TI victims. TI stands for targeted individuals. Some of them are pretty crazy. They have names like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, and those are the confusion tactics. And when they're breaking down the ego of the human through all the pains and tortures and the verbal breakdown, these are typical CIA torture scripts. I mean, Kubark manual. And they do good cop, bad cop interrogation called Jeff and Mutt, and they go right through the list, right? Just textbook. So whoever the handlers are on the other side of this synthetic telepathy, they're following the handbook perfectly.